Hey mom, can I have Genshin Impact for Christmas? Honey, we have Genshin Impact at home. Tower of Fantasy is the best, worst gacha game that I've ever played. It is a beautiful game with decent combat and enormous fun world to explore, but it is also simultaneously the most disconnected, convoluted mess of a game that the devs actively try and entice you into skipping. Like every time a major patch comes out, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, they let you skip the entirety of the previous patch. They do not want you to know the story. They do not want you to enjoy what they spent long hours creating. They do not take pride in what they've made, and it shows. Hey, my name is Stix and welcome back to the worst gacha ever, a video series where I discuss a gacha and tell you guys what I thought in explicit detail as we attempt to find the worst gacha ever. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that little bell notification, that way you remain up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post every Sunday. Do not miss out. Now pull out your Dorito bag, grab a vanilla Coke, and let's get talking. Tower of Fantasy is an open world MMORPG gacha. Two types of games that go together about as well as a wet sandwich. MMOs are all about community, working together with other people to achieve a common goal, overcoming powerful world bosses, running dungeons, and gearing up so you can be competitive, guilds, guild wars. Gacha games are all about maximizing how much you can spend to attain the most powerful characters, dominating content on your own. So what do you get when you combine the two together? Tower of Fantasy, a game where players spend money so they don't have to engage in any of the MMO content, where you hope to God you get someone that spent a ton of money in your team when running group content so they can solo everything, freeing you up to do literally anything else. You get a game that reinforces spending money to obtain the current flavor of the month hero, acquiring duplicates of them so they can increase their overall output. This is something that you'll never be able to achieve without spending money or skipping every single banner character leading up to whoever you're anticipating. And even then, is it worth it? I play gacha games to acquire the hot waifus and husbandos. I don't play gacha games for the meta. Therefore, it doesn't matter to me if in, say, Nikkei or Girls Frontline 2, I don't have upgraded units. They don't matter because the game is single player. Tower of Fantasy is not, and therefore if you're not dumping egregious amounts of money into the game, you're likely gonna fall behind anyone that is, which means you'll always be inferior. That just is not an enjoyable aspect of any game to me. No matter how hard I try, people that throw money at the devs will always trivialize content and by extension, me and you. You start off the game being introduced to the world via Walmart Vera from Punishing Grey Raven, after which you're given the option to select your character, male or female wanderer, who are both together, running from the giant dog behind them, but after separating, never mention each other ever again. It's like they thought, let's introduce the two main protagonists like Genshin Impact did, and instead of setting up a world where the sibling you choose is searching for the other half, providing a purpose to them, we just forget about it. This is a recurring issue with this story. It is so disjointed and laughably bad that it makes the game feel like a joke. And it stays that way forever. I played through 1.0 again from the start on stream to showcase what the storytelling was like. And you know what happens? They take you to the space station, you watch the scene there, and then the entire game from 1.0 through the end of the 1.x patch series is skipped. Shirley is now Nemesis, and she's ready to accompany you to Vera, which is the beginning of 2.0. I've sat there, chat sat there with me, hundreds of people unable to comprehend what I did wrong or why the game thought making the story continue immediately into 2.0 after getting here was a good idea. But the vast majority of new players aren't going to know any better. They don't have the experience that I have. How could they? The main story to continue 1.0, you're actually going to need to cycle through your side quests, navigate to the quest in sequence, and continue from there. But only if you're actively aware you need to do this, and again, you will not be, you cannot be. You're playing this for the first time, you don't know any better. It's horrible, genuinely the worst form of storytelling I've ever seen. I cannot stress how bad the new player experience is in this game. It is unbearably awful, and no amount of trying to defend this abhorrent experience will save it. It's just not good. It doesn't matter how you look at it. After clearing the intro, you're introduced to Zeke, who genuinely looks like one of the worst designed NPCs I've seen in any gacha game released after 2020. And this voice acting, my god, just take a moment here to listen to it.
Suppressor seems to be fine. No need to worry.
Did they have a vocal director, or did they bring a bunch of random people into a room and say, hey Bob, yeah, go ahead and go read these lines, while holding microphones to their mouths? In their defense, after 3.0, the voice acting does pick up. They begin using more Hoyo voice actors, and the difference in quality is night and day. But listening to them for the first couple hundred hours of the game, and then continuing to listen to the same characters with the same voice actors, even moving into 3.0 and 4.0, makes you want to take a screwdriver to your ears. This game has an absolutely enormous world to explore. While the 1.0 and 2.0 regions are pretty basic, here's a forest with mountains, here's a desert with mountains. In 3.0 and 4.0, things really pick up and get a lot better. In 1.0 and 2.0, exploration is also pretty bad. You possess a jetpack, which allows you to gain a small distance vertically, but outside of that, you're gonna spend a lot of time slowly climbing. Of all the horrible features they decided that they'd take from Genshin, the wall climbing should not have been one of them. Thank God Wuthering Waves has wall running, Azure Primelia has a full flight system, and Ananta allows you to slingshot yourself around the world, because after sitting through this in Genshin, and then sitting through this in Tower of Fantasy, and then again in Tower of Fantasy recently, it makes me never want to climb in a video game ever again. Thankfully, in 3.0, they do introduce wall running shoes, but that's not usable outside of the 3.0 region, so not really worthwhile. It kind of sucks as a feature, especially because it made exploration so much easier. Back when Tower of Fantasy launched, it was heavily time gated. I'm sure the vast majority of you recall running around the world seeing orbs and chests that said, come back in 73 hours. Well, that's no longer the case anymore. Chests, orbs, treasures in general are no longer time gated, meaning you can obtain everything in the world that you see without, okay, you know what? No, that's a lie. There is still definitely gating present. As you can see, I was trying to explore the north region in 1.0, and I couldn't due to the suppressor being too low level, meaning that I need to play the game and upgrade it further before going further north. Fuck, I hate gating content, dude. This is an open world game. Let me run where I want, when I want. This is a detriment, a deterrent to exploration. You should be rewarded with cool shit for exploring, not suffer for doing so. Admittedly, I do not recall running into this issue in any of the 3.0 or 4.0 zones, so maybe they decided to remove it as a feature. Thank God. For people that thought Tower Fantasy would no longer be a buggy mess after the release because they've had years to improve, to implement fixes, well, you'd be mistaken. I couldn't do a single game session without encountering something that screwed me over. Here I was following the quest target, then the dude just flies into the mountain, getting stuck. Yeah, cool. This dude just falls into the wall. This dude's just staring at the wall, and then he just begins phasing in and out of it. They can't even get small scenes like this without bugs ruining them entirely by moving. Not all cutscenes are bad though. The one where you ride your motorcycle with Rosalind was pretty good. The character models were a little square, jagged, but overall, this was a very high quality and peak storytelling. I thoroughly enjoyed my what was this? Oh, my 30 seconds. Yeah, it only takes me 30. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed my 30 seconds on Thur around the city. I don't recall a single thing she said, but I definitely enjoyed the view for that 30 seconds. I needed to stay on the vehicle for a few minutes after, because I couldn't get up. While exploring the world, you'll engage in a lot of combat. You cannot avoid it, no matter how hard you try. Combat is pretty basic, but surprisingly deeper and more complex than their upcoming gacha game Neverness to Everness. Every character, every weapon, really, has their own basic attack, heavy attack, and ultimate ability. In NTE, characters had no heavy attack, which was really limiting, and I genuinely hope that they fixed that. Characters introduced in 1.0, in 2.0, and heck, even the 3.0 patches all feel heavily outdated when compared to the 4.0 characters. Over time, the game has continued to improve not only character models, but also attack animations and abilities. Unfortunately, for the majority of the first few months, you are going to get mostly old characters because they're the most common in the standard pool. You equip 3 different weapons, each weapon fulfilling one of several different class archetypes: tank, DPS, support. Although newer tank heroes actually out DPS old DPS heroes and out survive old support heroes, making them ridiculously OP. Which brings us to Tower of Fantasy's major flaw: the power creep. It is absolutely horrendous. You can search any public forum, any social media platform, Discord. They might glaze the fuck out of this game, but the majority of them understand power creep is present. They just refuse to complain to a point where the devs do anything about it. Weapons have their own individual combat power, base stats, traits, and matrices. Matrices are essentially artifacts in Genshin or echoes in Wuthering Waves. You farm them or you buy them, which means yes, matrices are also pay to win, since you can obtain the max rarity SSR tier ones via Gacha. They each come with around 2 or 4 set bonuses, amplifying the weapon significantly. Again, a major reason this game fails as an MMO, there are just so many ways that you can pay to gain an advantage, it's silly. You can level weapons utilizing materials you either farm, earn, or buy. You advance them via dupes, meaning the more you pay, the more powerful they are. After equipping matrices onto your weapons, you can level them, upgrade them, and advance them via dupes as well, further bolstering your power and setting yourself apart from your poor co-players. While you don't farm gear for each of your simulacrum, the weapons, you do farm gear for yourself. This gear can be leveled, it can also be enhanced. Enhancing gear allows you to essentially limit break it through to higher levels, unlocking additional bonuses as you continue to do so. I think the best part of Tower of Fantasy's gearing system is that once your gear is leveled, even if you acquire a better piece, you're not forced to re-level it. Rather, your levels are automatically transferred over to the new piece of gear seamlessly, eliminating any need to level up from scratch. This is a type of progression that I wish other games, especially MMOs, had. I hated getting new gear, upgrading it, and then just trashing it for new gear. I'd feel much more reward, much more satisfaction if I'm able to retain my investment into it. Your suppressor is another type of character progression. Increasing levels boosts your base stats, and if you recall earlier, allowing for you to progress to areas that you weren't capable of visiting otherwise. So it's imperative you level this as soon as you can. Unlike games like Wuthering Waves or Genshin Impact, Tower of Fantasy has a functional vehicle system. This makes exploration so much easier, but the climbing is still horseshit. Your vehicles are upgradable, they're maintainable, but get stuck on every little bump on the road, making pathing a nightmare. I'm serious, you clip on everything. It's infuriating. But it is a very cool feature that more games need to implement, and I'm glad Azure Parmelia is. There are a lot of things to do in games, so much so that you'll probably never run out of things to do. They push out very frequent updates and transition between major versions once or twice a year. Every major patch introduces a plethora of new features while eliminating others. You can fight world bosses, but can do them on your own without difficulty. Participate in numerous types of casual content in the form of minigames like mahjong, fishing, beach volleyball. And that's where the game gets good. Engage in more difficult content, solo, in the form of the Ruins and Bygone Phantasm group content for dungeons, raids, and other game modes where you deal negligible damage and wait for the whales to complete it for you. Or PvP, which is absolute trash as it always has been and always is in gacha games. You'll log in each day to run your daily quests, complete whatever event is going on, probably run around collecting balls. My god, the ball collection. I have severe PTSD from this game. Whenever I start a new gacha and it involves placing my hands around any type of round object, I immediately tense up and cringe. Why the devs thought collecting balls in every single patch after 3.0 was a good idea leads me to question their sanity or their competency. And then I recall what happened with crossplay, and I recall just how incompetent the Tower of Fantasy devs truly are. Yes, this game has plagiarized other games. Yes, they stole other creators' work and attempted to pass it off as their own, but their biggest fumble was in the form of their PlayStation launch. When Tower of Fantasy launched on a console, they did so with an entirely clean slate, which sounds good. But what that means is that there is no crossplay functionality present at all. When you download Tower of Fantasy on your PC, you can log into the same account on your phone and continue to play it regardless of the platform because of cross-save functionality. However, the PS5 version does not have that. When you download the game on PS5, you start from scratch, even if you've been playing for a year. There is, or at least at the time was, no way of linking your accounts together, and I still believe that to be the case. If you've played on the PS5 and you want to convert to PC or mobile, then start again, and vice versa. There is no other option. Genshin Impact has cross-platform functionality, so does Zenless Zone Zero, so does Honkai Star Rail, so does Wuthering Waves, or it will when it launches on a PS5 in January 2025. But not Tower of Fantasy now. Instead, they'd rather fracture their community and punish players for wanting to migrate to a platform that might be better for them. This admittedly did cause a lot of players to quit. Their Tower of Fantasy remake caused players to quit. Bad choices, bad decisions have led to a mass exodus of players ever since it released. Where other games, Love and Deep Space, Nikke, Wuthering Waves, Zenless, Genshin, Star Rail, and even more recently Girls Frontline 2 repeatedly make it into the top 10 on app stores for new character releases, Tower of Fantasy doesn't even break top 100. Which might also be partly due to the story and the character models themselves, I guess. Just looking at some of the characters, like, dude, they're just bad. Generally, male, female. The devs are trying, but they look plastic, they look undetailed, emotionless. People call this the Walmart Genshin because somehow it looks worse than Genshin. And don't even get me started on the story. My God, I swear they hired someone with absolutely no experience whatsoever to write 1.0, and then they fired him after he completed 1.0, brought on someone new for 2.0, fired them after 2.0 was completed, and then brought on someone new for 3.0, 4.0, and then just continues to repeat this without allowing them to share ideas or even experience past content. That is legitimately how disoriented you feel when playing this game. Now, let's talk gacha, since that is one of the most important aspects of every gacha game. There are standard and limited banners present. Standard and limited banners do not share the same currency for pulls, but you can pull on standard banners with two types of currency, one free, earnable in-game, and one premium, as denoted by the gold and purple balls. Limited banners utilize the red orbs, which you can earn through events or via purchasing. You're guaranteed an SR unit every 10 pulls and a guaranteed SSR unit every 80 pulls. However, there is no traditional 50-50 present, where if you fail your first 50-50, you're guaranteed the limited character on your next 50-50. You could do 500 pulls in a row and never obtain the limited banner character. But there is a pity present. After doing 120 pulls, you'll be able to purchase a limited banner character outright via the store, similarly to Nikke. This is both good and bad. It's good because there is a hard pity at 120, but it's bad because it means you can't fail a 50-50 in a previous banner and then guarantee a 50-50 in the next. This is because the pity you build up resets between limited banners, which is a fucking joke. At least Nikke lets you stack them indefinitely. Unfortunately, the same rates apply for matrices, however at a reduced maximum of 40 for a guaranteed SSR and 80 for a store purchase. This game has the makings of something absolutely incredible. It has so many positives going for it: decent action combat, a beautiful world, great exploration, what could have been good character models, but they just decided to throw it all away to make a crappy Genshin clone, which is what this ultimately turned out to be, because it improves on absolutely nothing. Now let's break down my rating. Content, 10 out of 10. There is more to do in this game than almost any other gacha game that I've played since coming into the genre. Difficulty, 4 out of 10. It's difficult if you have bad characters. It is easy if you have good ones. The power creep is directly responsible for this. Free-to-play friendliness, 3 out of 10. The gacha is absolutely terrible. Pity resets for limited banners. There's no guaranteed 50-50. It is disgusting how greedy these devs are. Gameplay, 3 out of 10. Whenever I hold polls asking where Tower of Fantasy would fall in terms of action gacha games, it is always the bottom. Legitimately, the bare bottom. The final, least rated, worst rated action gacha game. But I personally don't think it's that bad. It's nowhere near any of the other action gacha, Wuba, Zenless, Honkai Impact, Punishing Gray Raven, even Ether Gazer, but it isn't bad. Graphics, 5 out of 10. Characters look bad, but the world looks good. The animations were bad, but the skill effects were good. So 5 out of 10 seems about right. Sound, 6 out of 10. Honestly, it was pretty decent, nothing memorable, but there were some areas that did hold my attention. Story, 0 out of 10. Most people have no idea there's even a story present, especially when you can skip it all and go straight to current content. Voice acting, 0 out of 10. The worst of any major gacha I have heard. Absolutely horrible. World, 7 out of 10. The world is beautiful. It is filled with things to see. It is filled with things to do. Honestly, Domain 9 is one of my favorite regions of any gacha game that I've played. Fun, 1 out of 10. I did not enjoy this game. Exploring, yeah. Everything else, no. Overall, I'd give this 39 Genshin clones out of 100 angry TOF White Knights, or 3.9 out of 10. I cannot understand how they messed this game up so badly. Genuinely. Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the 2 videos that are gonna be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.